Cuba is a Caribbean island located in the Gulf of Mexico, about 90 miles from the United States. Following the fall of the Soviet Union in 1990, Cuba lost the market for its sugar and the favorable terms of trade for oil. The country was plunged into an economic crisis called the Period Especial, characterized by an intense lack of food, fuel, fertilizer, chemicals, spare parts, and other industrial and agricultural inputs. Although the Cuban government proclaims that all Cubans have enough food to eat, many eyewitnesses state otherwise. Protein is an important part of a balanced diet. There seems to be some question as to whether or not enough protein is acquired through their normal diet of rice and beans. Many fields are not being cultivated. They are filled with weeds and abandoned equipment. Agricultural technology is at an all-time low. To make up for this lack of agricultural production, Cuba imports nearly 80% of its food it consumes. With the increase in food prices on the international market, how will they be able to feed themselves? This presentation contains data gathered from the International Futures, or IFS for short, modeling system developed at the Graduate School of International Studies at the University of Denver. There are many data sources within the International Futures model that make up the IFS database. The graphs used in this presentation concerning Cuba were taken from the United Nations Food and Agricultural Organization and the World Bank World Development Indicators. Supply and demand is a basic concept. The population of Cuba has steadily increased from around 7.5 million people to just over 11 million. When population increases, the demand for crops increases as well. The correlation is simple, but an important one to remember. The current Cuban agricultural policy can be illustrated using a simple chart like this one. When yield increases due to insufficient equipment or manpower, agricultural production decreases. When agricultural production decreases, agricultural imports are in high demand increase. This is where the first outlying variable comes into play. Currently, the Cuban government spending is focused on imports. With agricultural imports increasing, the food demand decreases due to availability. Food demand is based on population, which is connected to malnutrition. If there are calories available, malnutrition decreases. When malnutrition decreases, population grows and food demand increases. When food demand is high, prices go up. How can Cuba increase agricultural production, decrease imports, and keep prices at below their current levels? The next few slides will illustrate the difference between the baseline. These are future predictions that are assumed if nothing changes to the current Cuban policies, versus alternative futures based on the following changes. First, increase agricultural technology by 30%. The IFS model allows us to increase yield to simulate an increase in agricultural technology. This chart represents the forecast agricultural yield based on a 30% increase in technology. The yield rises at a steady rate from 0.25 metric tons per acre in 2013 to over 0.44 metric tons per acre in 2049. A gain of around 0.1 metric ton per acre between the baseline and the proposed 30% increase in technology. By 2049, agricultural production went from 1.33 million metric tons to 2.21 million metric tons. Agricultural imports decreased by 0.7 million metric tons. Second, decrease the agricultural demand by 20%. The forecast shows a decrease in food demand from 2.7 million metric tons to 2.1 million metric tons, a reduction of 0.2 million metric tons by 2049. Third, decrease the malnutrition rate by 50%. In Cuba, malnutrition is low. However, a 50% reduction can be obtained through an increase in calories. The result is a decrease in malnutrition by 0.9% by 2049. Now compare the agricultural demand and production based on the three variables that were changed. The results show two supply and demand curves that are converging over time but are not yet projected to connect. The trend does indicate that they will converge at some point in the future. However, it is clear that an increase in agricultural technology and a decrease in agricultural demand is needed. Consider this. In order to increase yield, there are two things that could be done. The first requires obtaining manpower and equipment currently used by the Cuban military that could be redeployed into the fields. This would not reduce the number of military personnel, it would only redirect money and resources toward agricultural endeavors. Second, funding of agricultural technology is the key to increasing yield in imports while decreasing demand from a protein-deficient population. An increase in production of agricultural products would provide the calories needed to increase protein levels. By redirecting the Cuban military toward agricultural endeavors, agricultural technology levels could surpass the 30% proposed increase. The production surplus created could be exported or traded for different types of imported food. Food that could be used to decrease demand and pull the supply and demand curves closer together in a shorter amount of time. To request a detailed copy of the Framework Forecast Report entitled Cuban Agricultural Demand versus Production in 2050, please contact Reinke Consulting Services at darren.reinke@yahoo.com and request your free copy. Thank you.